I will allow you the first pick in this selection here. Who has exceeded your expectations so far?
Well, let's go to Wisconsin and look at John Tonje, the transfer out of Missouri, and he has been phenomenal. Obviously dropped 41 points against Arizona, which was really eye-popping, but I think the process of how he got here is fascinating. I talked with Greg Gard about this. They kind of viewed Moneyball as guys who are transfers maybe coming from losing programs. Last year, John Tonje was on a Missouri team that didn't win an SEC game, and now he didn't play very much. But a lot of people might have had some stink on him. He transfers to Wisconsin, and he has become maybe the best player on this team. And I think John Blackwell might have something to say about that eventually. But he's been phenomenal. And Wisconsin's a lot of post-ups. Tonje is awesome at cutting off of those. They've also used him in pick and rolls. And look, he's a 6-year senior. He's an old veteran. He knows how to be at the right place at the right time. And he's getting to the free throw line at will, shooting it well from downtown. Really everything's coming together for him. And this is the kind of the version of roster building that Wisconsin's going to have to lean on right now while they get their NIL figured out. Because a lot of times this offseason, everyone's like, well, Wisconsin's pretty poor after they lost A.J. Storr and after they lost Chucky Hepburn in the portal. For them to go out and find a player like Tonje, like the ROI on an addition like this is through the roof.
Yeah, and I think it's only appropriate that we put the Wisconsin people on notice. Like, this isn't sustainable to go out and to spend so much less money than everybody else and hope to find a guy like John Tonje, because he has been exceptional. A few things I want to highlight here. Number one, obviously the ability to get to the free throw line. He had 22 free throw attempts against Arizona, but in 4 of the first 5 games, he's had at least 8. So although we don't expect him to get to the line 22 times, he's gotten there frequently in all but 1 game, and he's an exceptional free throw shooter. He's also become a very good 3-point shooter. I think the versatility within his skill set has made him especially effective. Like, he can score at different levels within the flow of the offense. He gets easy buckets because he gets to the free throw line. And you mentioned something earlier. I think he's a heck of a cutter too. So you combine that with a 23-year-old who's 6'5", physical, and can kind of play through contact, and then has this seasoned mind for the game as well. Played 4 years at Colorado State. Last year at Mizzou was basically a wash because of the injury. But this is a guy who knows how to play, and dare I say has been better for Wisconsin than A.J. Storr was last year, which is why they as a team and he individually are drastically exceeding expectations so far. All right, I guess it's my pick in the draft, right?
That's how snake drafts works, I think.
Yeah, all right. So now I know I'm walking into this one because you're going to say he wasn't overrated. You always knew he was this good. But I'm going to go Ryan Nembhard from Gonzaga. I think Gonzaga is playing as well, if not better, than any team in the country. And I think Nembhard is the most important player on that team. You look at what they've done so far, smashing Baylor in the opener, beating Arizona State, going on the road and winning at San Diego State. And it's all because this guy is an absolute maestro. Everybody's talking about the assist-to-turnover ratio, and you should when it's 10-1. I'm going to say that again. 10 assists per game against just 1 turnover. That's absolutely insane. It's clearly unsustainable, but hey, it just goes to show like how advanced this guy is. But if we get into the weeds a little bit more, what I've really liked about him is the fact that he can do it at multiple tempos. So Gonzaga likes to get out and play in the open floor. And if you are a big man playing with Nembhard, you are motivated to run because he throws it ahead really, really well. In the half court, he's equally precise with his reads, playing with ball screens. And I'll say this too. He knows how to lead receivers in the half court just like he does in the front court. His individual offense has not been the priority. I think he's taken more than 7 shots once so far in a game, but his shooting percentages are off the charts just in terms of his efficiency with the ball. So this guy, I think, has been arguably the best player on the best team in college basketball through the first 2.5 weeks. But what say you?
You're singing his praises. This is my guy. This is the type of player that I've been really in on for a while. You know, we did our top 100 rankings for CBS Sports. I had Nembhard number 8 in that. Like, he is, to me, right up there. Hits him or Braden Smith as the best initiator point guard in college basketball. Gonzaga, 14 of the last 16 years, they've had a pick and roll offense that's rated in the 90th percentile or higher on Synergy. I think this year is no doubt like this team is going to be one of the elite pick and roll offenses in college basketball. And he's the kind of really the straw that stirs the drink. He's the one that finds the lobs. He has that pocket pass down. He's getting wide open shooters, transition. They're awesome. And, I thought like San Diego State, like Brian Dutcher had a really good quote afterward that like Graham Ike should take him out to eat every single day because he makes life so much easier. Like that's That's Ryan Nembhard. I think he is playing like a first-team All-American, and maybe number 8 for him in my preseason top 100 was actually a little bit too low.
Well, he finished 26 in that preseason list. And if you had him in 8, that means some people had him in the 30s. I don't even remember where I had him, to be honest, but he is exceeding all my expectations. You mentioned that San Diego State game. I thought Mark Few had a very telling quote after that game. He talked about Nembhard's ability to not just handle the physicality, but also the noise of that building. And if you've ever like coached a game in that kind of environment, you know, like sometimes your guys just can't hear you. And so to have a point guard who instinctively knows what to run and can run the team without necessarily a verbal interaction with his coach most times, that is such a luxury. And Nembhard gives them that. I mean, that is a really impressive road win in a rabid environment. And he handled it beautifully. So kudos to you for your early preseason pick, but he has certainly exceeded my expectations. All right, it's on to you. Number 3, who is the third player on your exceeding expectations team so far?
Well, this is another one of my loves. It's Otega Oweh out of Kentucky, and he's averaging 15 points a game. And I swear, you go through all of his shots, they don't run a single play for him. Maybe 2, maybe 3 this year. It's like he scores through osmosis. He runs the floor. He gets deflections in transition and gets out on the break. He'll catch and shoot an open, three-pointer. If teams are sagging off of him, he'll just drive to the rim. And really, he's been a big part of Kentucky's much improved rim rate. He is constantly putting pressure on the rim, but he doesn't force anything. He doesn't have a super high usage rate. He just kind of guards and does his job. Like, he's just been awesome for them. And that's like the one thing that I love about this Mark Pope offense is that like you don't have to dribble and try to like get your one-on-one game on. It's finding openings, it's getting 2 to the basketball and just attacking creases. And Oweh has been a huge part of that. And plus, I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up his defense. He was phenomenal defensively. He is their best defensive player. That steal that he had against Cooper Flagg late in the championship classic second half to really sealed the game, that was a big-time play. So the defense, being able to score without a play being run for you, like it's pretty incredible what he's doing this year. And he looks not maybe like Kentucky's best player, but like he's been one of their most important transfers so far.
All right, let me add to that because I couldn't agree more. The thing that has stood out to me is I think he fits with this team beautifully. Defensively, you said he's the best defender on their team. I think he's the best defender on 99% of teams in college basketball. But Kentucky's got 2 other guys that are potentially just as good, and Lamont Butler and Amari Williams. We could argue that all we want, but I think the point is that Oweh doesn't have to guard the other team's best perimeter threat every night because sometimes Lamont Butler is going to do it. And when he does, that frees him up to be a playmaker, like we saw against Cooper Flagg, like we've seen him jump into passing lanes. The fact that he's got Amari Williams behind him frees him up that much more. And the ability to create offense from his defense, I think, has really gotten him into a rhythm where all of a sudden now he's making shots. We're talking about a player who made 1 3-pointer 2 years ago as a freshman at Oklahoma. Now, he took a big jump last year in terms of his percentage, but he was only making 1 3 about every 3 games. Now, this is unsustainable, but he's over 50% from the 3-point line. He's only taking wide open looks, but he's making them pay. And the other night, when opposing defenses started to go under ball screens, started to go under pin downs, which they always do against him, he stopped and shot behind it. So the amount of spacing Kentucky is playing with, the amount of defensive integrity they have in terms of like elite defenders who free him up to be a little bit more of a playmaker, I think it's all just a tremendous fit. And I couldn't agree more. He's been fantastic.
I think your point too about like just finding the right fit for you was so important in the portal. It's like, I think sometimes it's like, hey, is it big name, a lot of money? Like, is that important? Kentucky is a big name, but it's also a phenomenal fit just with all of the shooting they have and bigs who can pass. Oweh really like is maximized when you have big men who can pass because that really brings out his cutting, and that's been on full display so far this year.
All right, the guy I want to talk about was at Kentucky last year, Adou Thiero at Arkansas. I think he has been phenomenal. I mean, John Calipari said it the other night. He said, if there are 10 better players in the country than Adou, I need you to show them to me. And honestly, I think that's fair so far. I mean, what this guy has done, let's start with the physicality of it. 6'8", incredibly powerful, and an absolutely elite athlete. He had a play the other day where he had to reach down and catch like a loose ball. It was under his knees. And in one motion, he rose up and dunked the ball with two hands, like explosively. So he is a highest level athlete. I think even by NBA standards, I think his defensive versatility is off the charts. Then you have offense, and he's getting out in the open floor. He's made strides with his shooting, and he's making mid-range shots too. So in an Arkansas offense that is getting some catch and shoot mid-range shots, I present that without comment, and also allowing him some physical straight line drives to both sides into pull-ups. He's been really, really effective and on both ends of the floor. So to me, he's just been terrific so far.
No, I'm right there with you. I think that he's been their best player. And I think a lot of people have coming into the year, you've been like, well, Boogie Flan's probably ahead of him, and Nelly Davis definitely ahead of him, and Jonas Aidoo's definitely ahead of him. Like right now, yes, I know injuries have popped up for Davis and Adou, but Thiero is like their best player. And the one point you made too, Arkansas's transition rate, I think, is going to be really, really important this year. That's their best way to score when they get out in the open floor. Thiero, like he embodies all of it. Like he's just a complete freak show in the open floor. I don't know how you stop him. I think there's a chance that he could lead college basketball in transition points per game this year.
Well, he's certainly one of the best finishers in the country. That goes without saying. All right, Trotter, we're going to wrap this up. We're each going to pick a freshman. Tell me who is your freshman overachiever so far.
I love LeBaron Philon. I think that what he's brought to Alabama, Mark Sears is their best player. I think LeBaron Philon has been their best two-way player so far this season. His stop-start is absolutely ridiculous. He's just putting Purdue defenders in the dust when I was there watching him live on Friday. And then it feels like you have to really watch the full game, not just his highlights, to get the best version of what Philon is and see what he actually does. It's offensive rebounds. It's getting into the paint and spraying it out and finding shooters. It's pushing it in transition. It's stop-start. It's like the little hesitation move that he has where you can get into the paint. Like the skill, the shooting, and the feel is off the charts for him. And defensively, he's been great so far this year. Nate Oates has already called him one of their best perimeter defenders already. I don't know how he isn't a one and done at trajectory at this point. Like he literally is checking off every box for me right now. When you factor in what the NBA is really wanting with positional size, what they really want in shooting, and what they really want in feel, he has all three of those things. I genuinely think he's a one and done type prospect.
All right. That is interesting. I will say this. I think the game is easier for him now because he gets to play next to Mark Sears. Right now, he's shooting 36% from the 3-point line. We'll see if that is going to sustain, because that was one of the big question marks coming into the season. But certainly exceeding expectations. We've talked about this in a past episode, but I was there the first day of practice, and it was clear right away that he was the most ready of their four freshmen. Now, they had four freshmen all finished within the top 50 last year. Darian Reed was the guy who was getting the most one and done hype, and physically, he looked great. He'd put on 25 pounds of muscle, but he had a pair of injuries in the preseason that limited him. And Philon was the guy who was adjusting physically, adjusting mentally as well, in terms of understanding schemes on both ends of the floor, figuring out how to pick his spots and impact the game, but with less volume than he had in high school. So I'm right there with you. I'm not sure I'm co-signing the one and done thing just yet. But I will say this, like, if he continues to play at this level, there's an argument to be made for, like, hey, go while people are intrigued, and not when you come back and Mark Sears isn't there and you're the focal point of every opposing scouting report, because that's a vastly different calculus of what the game could look like.
No, it's a great point. But I think just what he's been so far this year, like I genuinely think he's their best two-way player. It's honestly remarkable. I was not expecting that coming into this year. It's Cliff, it's Mark, it's Latrell Wrightsell. It's, hey, I've talked ad nauseum about Chris Youngblood, the transfer out of South Florida. But every time I watch Philon, it's like, man, he just impacts winning in so many ways. I love the dude. I think he's a phenomenal freshman and has been one of the best 5 freshmen in college basketball this season.
No doubt. I'm with you. All right. This one is for producer Kenny. We're going to talk about Georgetown freshman Thomas Sorber. Thomas Sorber finished as a top 50 recruit last year and was on a linear path, like continued to get better throughout the course of his high school career, continued to transform his body. If you see him right now, you wouldn't know it, but he was a wide body who struggled with conditioning for most of high school, but He really invested in getting himself into basketball shape. And the numbers he's putting up at Georgetown right now are just tremendously impressive. What has been, I mean, listen, here's the reality of it. I don't think he was recruited to be the starter from day one. You can look at who Georgetown pursued in the portal last year and tell, like, they had the intent of landing a starting center in the portal. They didn't get one. And so it comes down, Sorber had that opportunity to step right in. And not only has he been able to do that, but he's been able to do that by putting up incredible numbers. I mean, to get 20 and 13 and then 25 and 9 in your first 2 college games. Now, got a little tougher when Notre Dame came to town. Like, when it's not a bye game or a guarantee game, all of a sudden it gets a little more difficult. But the skill level, the way he's expanded his game, the way he's expanded his conditioning over the years has certainly made him one of the best freshmen in the country. And I think with LeBaron, one of the 2 most pleasant surprises in this freshman class so far.
He's been phenomenal. And the other thing I would add to that is he reminds me a little of like Colin Murray Boyles, where the first time you watch him, you're like, oh, he just gets it. Like, he just moves differently. He processes information well. You can see him reading the floor really well. I really like Sorber. I think he's got a chance. You know, there's the Big East is tough for freshmen. It's Liam McNeely and it's Thomas Sorber right now for Big East Freshman of the Year. Those are the 2 guys that are really making impact. Well, you know, the rest of the league is dominated by the old vets.